When you want to understand why the fuck mainstream news is not covering a mini Chernobyl that occurred in fucking East Palestine, Ohio,
it's because of how much it would shake up the workers' rights situation, because of the ties to the environment, because of the ties to the lobbyists, because of the ties to regulations, because of the ties to bottom dollar profits. It's just too loud of a conversation. They can't afford to have it, so to speak. Hello, Halfpint here, and I just wanted to say real quick, if you've been enjoying my content, please remember to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and follow me on Twitch so you can always catch us when we're live and see more content. Also, if you are new here, welcome in, and if you're enjoying the video, please remember to like it because it helps me out a lot. I also post funny clips and other things on TikTok. All the links are in the description below, and thanks again. Now let's get into the video. There was a massive explosion of toxic chemicals that happened as a result of the train derailment, and the some of that was possibly due to safety protocols that the railroad unions were pushing for to be updated and federally regulated, or at least have regulations updated. We're not done. They were vetoed and fought back. They were fought by the railroad companies. So we're seeing like possibly a shift there where there is going to be some positive changes in this. But from what I understand, this comes down to the fact that some of these chemicals weren't classified properly the way they should have been. And as a result, some of these tanks are possibly eroded to a point where from carrying these toxic hazardous chemicals, they are eroded to the point where explosions are more possible because these tanks are structurally weaker, more likely to have leakage. From what I understand, there are animals that are dying as a result of the toxic chemicals that are now in the environment. There is literally acid rain in Ohio. People are reporting that there are weird things floating in their water, or that the water seems undrinkable. It's a really, really bad situation over there. So I wanted to take a look at this, kind of try and understand what's going on in Ohio, and also just talk about, why unions matter and the things that workers' unions can actually prevent if we, let the worker actually tell the employer what is needed to make the job safe, keep the job safe. The people who are actually working with the shit.
I have heard very little information coming out of East Palestine.
Well, a story that really caught my attention earlier this week. A train transporting combustible material was derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, late last week. Now, residents within a 2-mile radius were forced to evacuate as authorities carried out what was referred to as a controlled release of vinyl chloride from 5 train cars in order to prevent an explosion. Although, if you take a look at this video, it's pretty clear that it looks to be a bit of an explosion. And what's even worse—
No, it was a controlled demolition because they didn't want it to happen without. I think that part is normal. What's not normal, on the other hand, is like, because the derailment happened, those chemicals still absolutely spilled over.
As we're talking,
and I think that controlled or not controlled, they're probably undermining the environmental impact that this is having.
Talking about vinyl chloride, it's a—
Absolutely, yeah. No, there's one like guaranteed some sort of like byproduct of releasing chemicals into the atmosphere. Literally the sole reason that we don't just have them in giant open buckets, and we don't just dump them anywhere. Oh my God, what is happening? I have not heard too many people talking about the environmental impacts. I've just heard leaks, pieces here and there, mostly from people talking about things in Ohio on the internet, literal people who live there, but not a lot of reporting on it in the media, which isn't surprising, because if the environmental impacts were actually focused on and talked about, the pushback against not only the railroad companies, but the fundamental way our government and corporations are handling these sorts of situations with chemicals and the environment, would be a very loud conversation that they desperately do not want to have. It's the same reason they constantly push this idea of like, you need to recycle. As an individual, it's up to you to save the earth, when everyone knows damn well that like every individual could go fucking neutral. They could go carbon neutral, maybe even a little positive, and it is nothing, absolutely nothing compared to corporations and what they put out from their manufacturing, from the products they actually use that are not recyclable, that could be, from the way the recycle industry works and actually puts a lot of the things we attempt to recycle in just the same landfills as our trash goes, because recycling isn't as efficient as it should be. America doesn't even use plastic that's high enough grade to be recycled in other countries that actually attempt to recycle. That's how bad the situation is.
Chemical that's used to make car parts and PVC piping, but it's also linked to multiple cancers, and it can be deadly if breathed in for too long.
The National Transportation Safety Board told the regulatory agency, said, listen, these regulations should broadly cover not just oil, they should cover what's known as class 2 chemicals, which include, again, vinyl chloride. And the chemical industry lobbyists went to work pressuring the regulatory agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is.
Animals are dying in the region. I know we're going to get to that in a second. What I want to cover first is who's at fault, obviously. Right now, we don't fully know, okay? I mean, but everyone kind of has an understanding of who's at fault. It's, of course, the rail companies.
Right. The people who lobbied and fought against legislation that would regulate these things, that would have had these trains classified differently, that would have had different requirements on how many of these cards can be in one train. How are they stored? How are they organized? How are they kept? How often are the tanks that are carrying this liquid serviced, replaced? You know, how often is the railroad company spending money on this maintenance and taking loss on this, not transporting as much of it at a time, you know, those sorts of things. And it's also worth bringing up, like, the last time we saw a major explosion like this, it was because another company, a fertilizer company, had like 10 times the amount of a chemical that they should have had. So like the lack of chemical regulation in this country is staggering. It led to a incredibly devastating explosion in Texas when a train derailed. Also a chemical situation there, and it's led to another explosion and a devastating environmental impact here.
Safety regulations that actively
both come back to
stop,
lobbying.
You know, the many different instances where the workers' unions were saying we need more safety regulations, we need more employees, we need more workers to be hired. And I also have the footage of the fiery axle 20 miles before East Palestine.
So like, yeah, look at who was actually fighting there to create a safer situation for the citizens, the workers, the company overall. Which who gives a shit about that one, really? And the environment. It was the union who works with the workers who are seeing these situations, working with these things, fearing for their own lives, but also the lives of the communities they drive through, understanding how bad things could get and how bad things could be if the right number of things goes wrong, and how things should be different and handled better, and attempting to create a situation where there's at least a path to that. And there are people fighting against it for the sake of bottom dollar, and that's it.
Train derailment.
The same company that pushed to repeal this rule was a company that was touting these brakes in prior years before that. They were saying these brakes are so good, we shouldn't necessarily have to follow other stricter safety rules, because this new brake technology that we like can be used and can improve our safety. They didn't want a requirement for this. And look,
how do brakes change whether or not a chemical is flammable? How do brakes change whether or not an amount of that chemical being released or potentially exposed to the environment being devastating or not? I don't know personally. Sure, it makes it safer, but I think it's not about how, it's about the overall risk, and part of that risk is inherently, if shit hits the fan, how bad will it be? And if the answer is fucking devastating, well then we have to assume at some point shit will hit the fan.
Look, they made the argument that the costs outweighed the benefits. And what they were, you know, in granular detail, what they were saying was the cost to put these brakes on will raise costs for goods across the country.
Oh, man, we just can't do it, brother.
Personally, I don't understand how brakes is the only thing. I feel like that's such a bare minimum ask. So the fact that even that alone was looked at as like too costly, that's disgusting to me. I can't even believe that's what they're asking. Maybe I don't understand. Like, I know obviously when it comes to trains, controlling how fast you're going in turns without banks or just in general through intersections, incredibly important. Being able to stop efficiently, incredibly important. To save lives and also prevent collisions, which are incredibly devastating if you're talking about multiple trains. But I would also think there needs to be a visitation on or a visiting on, you know, how much of this chemical are we carrying? How often are we looking at, you know, how eroded these tanks are, which could lead to an easier situation of a puncture or an explosion in the event of a derailment. You know, it's so much more, I feel like, than just the brakes. But to hear that, like, even just getting new brakes on the trains is like a problem. Homie, trains need brakes. Flammable chemical or not, they need brakes that work. What are you talking about? That's crazy. Like, your workers need brakes. The big metal death tube that hauls ass on metal bars across the country definitely needs good brakes. What are you talking about?
There's no way. Meanwhile, they got billions of dollars in liquid fucking cash that they're utilizing for stock buybacks. So it's just an absolute fucking
$10 billion in stock buybacks. Holy fucking shit.
Lie. Straight up lie. Okay? Complete lie. Here's the investigation from Lever News from David Sirota. He says, before his derailment, Norfolk Southern helped kill a rule to require better braking systems. As he talked about, lobbyists also convinced regulators to ignore the NTSB and exempt such trains from being strictly regulated as high hazard flammable trains. The article was written 2 years ago. My co-workers and I have been trying to tell anyone who would listen to what would happen. This was an article on Vice from March 22nd, 2021. It's going to end up like Boeing, how freight rail is courting catastrophe. Workers are sounding the alarm, and drastic cuts in employees and maintenance in order to increase profits are tempting fate. 2 years ago, they wrote this article. Just before 5 a.m. on August 2nd, 2017, Alice Murray was fast asleep when her entire house shook, almost as if a freight train had crashed into the block, she told the Cumberland Times News. That's exactly what happened. But that's not the last time, nor was it the first time that people have actually complained about this. Here, back in December, a union rail worker warned about the potential for a catastrophic train derailment. Then a week ago, it happened in Ohio.
Rail workers warned us about disaster like this. I heard firsthand months ago about the corporate practice of precision scheduled railroading.
Precision scheduled railroading is shorter staff, longer hours, longer trains, less safety, less maintenance. Do I have all that right?
Oh, you got it all right. I mean, a lot of the derailments that you're seeing on national TV is one of a few things. It's lack of maintenance on the track, or they've cut the track gangs too short and they can't get out to fix it, or they've cut the carmans, which is the union that works on the rail cars. So we have one derailment here in Northeast Ohio where a wheel flange was very thin. It picked a switch and derailed an entire train. Luckily, it was full of candle wax and not something highly volatile.
Rail workers tried to strike over this stuff, but were stopped by Congress. A few weeks later, and here we are. Several Norfolk...
Stopped by Joe Biden and Congress. You know, the same guy who was just saying, let's unionize workers at his State of the Union address. This is why everyone knows he's full of shit when it comes to that, you know? He's campaigning so he can run for re-election, which I get, but, like, we just need fucking unions. Like, we just need workers' unions. Why do we have to relearn this lesson every revolution?
When you want to understand why the fuck mainstream news is not covering a mini Chernobyl that occurred in fucking East Palestine, Ohio,
it's because of how much it would shake up the workers' rights situation, because of the ties to the environment, because of the ties to the lobbyists, because of the ties to regulations, because of the ties to bottom dollar profits. It's just too loud of a conversation. They can't afford to have it, so to speak.
Understand that this is part of the reason, because mainstream news is liberal. Let's be real. Liberal, not in the sense that they like defend the Democratic Party over, like, you know, gender bills or whatever, which they clearly don't, by the way. They don't even fucking talk about all of the insane amounts of anti-trans legislation that's passing,
especially Missouri.
But
I'm sure this is talking about Missouri, right? Missouri has like more than any other state by far. It's super great to live here. I feel great about it every day. I feel so safe.
In the sense that they're anti-union, liberal in the sense that they are beholden to capitalists and the interests of capital
100%.
owners.
You're
if
right.
you talk about a massive train derailment that possibly has long-standing consequences, like health complications that are going to occur as a consequence of this, animals fucking dying in this region, people that will get cancer because of the carcinogens that are now all over the air that they breathe. If you talk about all that, immediately after the railroad unions collectively said this is going to happen weeks prior and Joe Biden fucking shut that shit down, all of a sudden things look a little bit different. Wow.
Yeah, all of a sudden the workers have a valid argument, and not only do they have a valid argument, they have the entire country's eyes on the situation and supporting them for their own safety. Like everyone starts to see it for a second, the picture of how it's all a ruling class spitting on and working for the or making money off of the exploitation of everyone down below. It does not matter what religion you are. It does not matter what race you are. It like those things play into how you're specifically oppressed, certainly. But the overall thing is workers versus rich people, and there are a lot of things they do to try and, you know, keep the lines divided, keep people separate, keep people from organizing, because organization would bring real change. And this is one of those things where a situation like this would unify everyone in the working class a little too much and create a little too much organization, and it actually threatens the economic structure of America. And that's why you won't see the media talking about the animals dying, the cancer that it's going to give people, the acid rain, all that. Absolutely insane, unbelievably horrible things that are happening in Ohio as a result of the chemicals.
Only Biden didn't personally intervene with the rail strikes. I mean, that literally did happen. Yes, that is exactly what happened. Most pro-union president in the history, right?
20 miles from where I grew up.
Fucking thank you.
So I met Clyde in East Palestine to ask him about it.
It looks like a faulty bearing caused a catastrophic derailment. These railroads are turning profits hand over fist. They've cut their workforce to bare bones. Carmen were inspecting cars about 3 minutes per car. That's always been the industry standard. Now it's 90 seconds per car.
Is that because of PSR?
Yes, it's a rush job right now. And these guys
3 minutes per car doesn't even seem like that much time, but to cut that already in half, holy crap, dude. Holy crap, dude. Train carts are big. Like,
are under pressure. I mean, they're working men and women, and, you know, if they don't hurry up and get this car done, they're going to be fired.
Profit at any cost. A disaster like this is simply a cost of doing business. They cut everything, make all the money, and pay off disasters in tiny flyover towns from the profit. But instead of answering for any of that,
Oh, speaking of the payout, you want to see the payout? You want to see the fucking fuck you money that they gave to the town? They gave $25,000. Residents of East Palestine, Ohio aren't even sure if their town is safe. They're extremely troubled by dead fish in the local stream and dead chickens found in a neighboring town. But guess what, guys? Don't worry. Norfolk Southern has got your back. $25,000 to an...
This is literally like a dystopian movie where there's like a small town and there's like a coal mine, and it's all ran by this one evil old man, some Scrooge-like old man. And like one of the opening scenes, you see someone carries home just like a miner's hat and folded up overalls, and they're like, yeah, sorry, your husband, he didn't make it. And then they get like a letter in the mail later that week, and it's like $25 from the boss, and he's just like, my condolences, and he just like slides them like a disgustingly low amount of money, as if any money at all would make it right. Any, like, just like devoid of all humanity, like, is that gesture. It's like disgustingly insulting for so many reasons. Like, it shows such a detachment from not only their humanity, but obviously what it's like to be a real person, and like the value of a dollar. God, God, it's literally like a dystopian film.
Ohio town where it caused a life or death evacuation. Remember, the local news at the time was reporting if you are in this area, if you're in the area of the smoke cloud, it's danger, grave danger to life. They evacuated the entire town. A couple days later, they're like, come on, you can come back in. It's all good. But fear not, 25 grand, baby. You're good. On February 6th, an apocalyptic plume of gas rose over the village of East Palestine, Ohio, blotting out the sky. Norfolk Southern, the U.S. railway company responsible for the toxic spew of vinyl chloride, has now offered a $25,000 donation to assist the area's nearly 5,000 residents who were ordered to evacuate their homes or face death. Hey,
God, that's so fucked. Giving $25,000 to an entire city after something like this is like so gross. It's so gross. Like, it's doesn't even come close. And not only should you have given like a sizable amount of money to the city, you should have probably also given money to like food banks, medical places, you know, like for like people who are less protected. Like you should have put money into places in the community where it really mattered, places that were extremely relevant to the harm you have just done to that community. Like it's like, it just shows how little they understand about regular life and how little they actually care, which is unfortunately not that surprising.
$5 billion fought the Federal Railroad Administration's push to upgrade the Civil War era brake system that remains widely used in American trains and against stricter rules on the transport of hazardous materials. Meanwhile, its employees...
I'm sorry. We're using a brake system from the Civil War era in a lot of our trains. I'm sorry. The unions were asking for mainly just better brakes for the sake of these chemicals. And they said it was too costly. The costs outweigh the benefits. And we are using brakes that we have been using since the actual 1800s, since the 19th century. It is the 21st. We are 2 centuries later. And they won't spend the money to get better. They like reinvent car brakes all the time. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
We still lack guaranteed sick leave. Thank you, Joe Brandon, by the way. You are my best friend. You are the one who allowed this to continue. There is a very solid chance Norfolk Southern knew there was a hot axle on this train miles before it derailed, but ordered the crew to keep moving because stopping to inspect or set out the car would delay other trains. It will be interesting to see if NTSB is able to recover radio traffic and readouts from the defect detectors along the route. Bro, remember how like they covered Chernobyl? Remember how like HBO Chernobyl, like we were talking about, like the USSR is so bad, the USSR is so bad, you know, oh, 9 Röntgen, not good, not great, right? Like, bro, this is the same shit. Breaking
Absolutely.
After the Ohio derailment, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg has no plans to reinstate Obama's brake rule, despite a warning to Congress that without it, there will be more derailments. Buttigieg's Department of Transportation is now considering a proposal that may weaken safety rules, actually.
Anything for big business. It's like people want to assume that Democrats are like actually against big business and that only Republicans are like slimy and take the money from lobbyists or from corporations. But the truth is, in a capitalist society, capital is power, capital is influence, capital is where things are. That's why everyone always says follow the money, right? To figure out what's really going on or why. It's because this is a capitalist society, not a socialist society where society is what matters most. Social relationships are what matter most. So in that situation, you know, in like the utopian capitalist society, you have the government making regulations to create a free and fair open market, because that allows businesses to thrive, ideas to thrive, and competition, which is healthy. But the reality of the situation, that in that situation, it pretends that like corporations and the government are completely separate. But the reality of that situation is, if you have a lot of money, you have a path to a lot of influence and power, meaning not only are some high executives also politicians, it does happen, or, you know, people who were politicians transition into business things after they have the influence of being a politician. But they all hang out in the same social circles regardless, just because of the social Galapagos effect that happens when you make more money. So, what goes on in the corporate world, what goes on in the corporate side of things in America actually is all like it matters a lot in our government, and it matters a lot in the shaping of our policies and who we vote for. Some of those spaces, they're very much overlapping spaces, and even if they weren't, because of lobbyists and things, they are very much intertwined. And as a result, it's not surprising to see something like this, where despite this horrific tragedy, despite this sort of situation, despite Pete Buttigieg even echoing a warning as a result of like this sort of situation, he's still considering, you know, a thing that actually benefits the railroad companies more, does nothing to address the dire situation with the workers, or the dire situation that environments could be in with more derailments. It's a bottom dollar thing. It all comes back to the government, and the government is structured like a corporation, and it runs itself much like any other corporation would. Bottom dollar profits.
You know, guys, you know what the American citizens would truly benefit from? Less regulation, which would create more derailments, because derailments are fun, you know? It's like a fun little activity. When toxic carcinogens basically enter the airwaves and also your water supply, it's like a fun thing. It's like an additional thing that you have to survive through. And everybody likes playing Fallout. A lot of people like playing that game, the video game Fallout. Why don't you want to live in Fallout world in the real world? I don't understand. You should be thanking me for creating this environment for you to enjoy. Safety concerns have also grown amid Norfolk Southern's implementation of precision scheduled railroading and operations policy criticizes a corporate money grab to cut costs, companies slash jobs more than a fifth since 2017. Meanwhile, the unions were literally like, bro, you need to hire more people. You need to hire more people. They're like, why would we hire more people?
In fact, a fifth of you are fired.
Of the same workforce to cover the same amount of work. I don't understand. That's called efficiency. You're being stupid. Well, guess what? This is what happens when you look for efficiency. But of course,
yeah, the idea of skeleton crews, that runs everywhere. I mean, like when I was 16 years old working at Subway, I was closing the store by myself, which was illegal because of how late I had to be there and the fact that I was a high school child. But that was a skeleton crew. It was for the sake of Subway that particular franchise owner squeezing as much money as he possibly could out of his restaurants. I only want to pay one employee a minimum wage for like the last 3 hours of the job, even though there's an impossible amount of work for you to do, because I also was required to be out of there 30 minutes after I locked the door, regardless, like no matter what. And it was impossible. There was literally no way for me to get it all done in 30 minutes. And so some days I was out in 30 minutes, but I got my ass chewed for not getting everything done. Some days I was out at like 11:30 and I got my ass chewed for having to stay late, and it didn't really matter. So it basically just came down to how bad did I want the money.
Here's the thing. Why should any capitalist corporation not do?
But obviously at a 16-year-old at a job like Subway, there are a lot less risks than, like, you know, someone driving a death machine, like a train across the country with chemicals in it. Like, the risks involved are astronomically different.
Do this. If the government is very openly defending them, if the government is very openly allowing them to do this, if no executive is like even expected to go to jail for this, why should they do anything? Why? There's no legislation. There's no one forcing their hand.
Yeah, there's no regulation.
When they can get away with throwing 25 grand, which is like honestly worse than not giving them any money.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like so disgustingly insulting because it's so low. Like it's worse than doing nothing because it's almost like spitting on a grave. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Like that'll fucking calm you down, you idiots. Fight over that small pile of cash.
Straight up. Giving the town that they have potentially eviscerated $25,000 of fuck you money seems worse than not giving them any money at all. It's literally like an insult. It's like, here, take this shit. Fuck off. It's like when, police unions or cities give payouts to like victims of police
after
brutality.
They murdered
like
someone. Yeah, like they literally murdered someone. Like, here's some money. It's just like, in what world do you think any amount of money is ever going to make this right, or that I wanted money? What I really wanted was, you know, to not have mine or someone I love civil rights violated, and definitely not murdered. Can we talk about a fundamental change in like policing? How about that instead of $15,000 for my dead relative?
In Florida, where they gave the family $4 or something for each of the children that saw their father get murdered in their own home by a cop, and then the city paid them out.
Sorry, 4?
25 cents a person or something, or either $4 or $1. That's a real story, by the way. That happened like in 2017. Anyway, on top of that, to make matters worse, ignoring concerns that understaffing could impact railway safety, which is what they did, they also initiated a $10 billion stock buyback program. Millions of dollars in corporate lobbying and poor regulations have created the perfect storm, according to Railroad Workers United, a cross-union rail workers caucus. The wreck of Train 32N has been years in the making. What other such train wrecks await us remain to be seen, RWU said in a press release. Oh, here, a man was shot and killed by the police. A jury gave his family $4. Nasty shit. Gregory Hill Jr. in 2014.
Yo, this country is absolutely disgusting. When I heard that they gave them $25,000, I like made the analogy or / joke of like, wow, this seems like a dystopian film. This actually is a dystopian film. This is straight, not even a film. This is a dystopian reality. Someone being murdered by cops in front of their children and a jury giving them $4 is so grossly inhumane. Like, just tear it all down. We have to tear it all down. The system's fundamentally broken if it's built in a way where something so devoid of any humanity or empathy can be viewed as an appropriate and actual possible response to something like that. That's fundamentally broken. There's a disregard here for people of certain religions and races that is absolutely abhorrent. Because you know they would never give a family of white kids $4 if a family member of theirs got murdered in front of them. It would be a completely different situation. And to pretend it's not is, I don't know, crazy.
I covered this. This is an old story that I covered way back in the day. Anyway, here is the Ohio news reporter, the local news reporter who got arrested. Body cam footage showing members of law enforcement and a top official in the Ohio National Guard confronting News Nation reporter Evan Lambert provides a different account than what the East Palestine PD released in a statement. Lambert was reportedly told his live shot discussing a train derailment was too loud, while Governor Mike DeWine spoke.
Oh yeah, this was crazy, and the governor actually condemned this. This reporter was arrested while talking in a camera. He was initially given a hard time because he was speaking while the governor was speaking, and they were like, "You can't do that. You can't talk while the governor's speaking." The cops got really kind of aggressive with him. They wrestled him to the ground. They arrested him. They released him a couple days later. The governor, I guess, didn't know it happened while it was happening, and then when he was told about it, he like condemned the action. Was like, that is absolutely disgusting, and that no, that's bad. I really hope he means that, but it just shows like the focus is not on the environment. The focus is not on the rail companies. The focus is on how the press is covering things, what they are saying, and how critical they are being of situations. The focus is on protecting capital.
To reporters, DeWine said he vehemently disapproved of Lambert's arrest.
You want me to file charges on you right now? Go ahead. I am allowed to be here. Did you not see that man put his hands on shut it down and continued on? Go. Now. Go. Now. Or you can go to jail. Sir. You want to go to jail for criminal trespassing? Do you want to go to jail for criminal trespassing? Do you understand? You know how quickly our lawyers will get me out? I don't care. Sir, can we I don't care. Let's talk outside. Go. Let's talk outside. Come on, outside. Come on. Out the door, sir. Out the door. By other media right here. I'm going to listen. I don't care. You're going to walk out the door. I'm going to listen. You're going to walk out the door. Do not touch me. Sir, can we talk outside, please? I am trying to listen. Talk outside, please. And he escalated with me. I am doing my job.
I wonder why he got arrested. Silly goose. Don't you know it's illegal when a cop decides that you're not supposed to be in a place or wants to be a fucking petty bitch? Don't you know it's
exactly as soon as there's an ego thing, as soon as it feels like, oh, I can get one over this guy, or this guy's trying to get one over on me, as soon as that happens, all bets are off. And
illegal to talk back to them, especially talking back while being black. That's, you know, that's an aggravating charge. Okay, I'm just letting you know.
This is covered by the First Amendment. Excuse me, sir.
100% is covered by the First Amendment. He's not doing anything illegal. He's allowed to talk during the governor. The governor apparently didn't even notice this whole situation unfolding, so he couldn't have been being that loud, and it looked like from his coverage that he was in the back of the room. So, like, I don't know. It definitely seemed like a singling out.
I'm the building supervisor here. Please leave. There you have it. You're going to stand outside. You are, or you're going to jail. Let's go. Let's go. You're under arrest. Under arrest. Oh, sir.
Oh my God! You guys, this is bad. Stop.
I am on the ground. What are you trying?
Freedom of speech, freedom of the press. These are the things that we fight for, right? These are the things that we stand for, right? Cool.
Stop resisting! Stop this! Oh my God! Stop! You get this. This is so bad.
Lay on your back. Lay flat, please.
You guys, he's a national correspondent. You cannot do this.
I'm a reporter with News Nation. It's all being recorded right now.
I hope it is.
That's great stuff.
Because
Good stuff.
Can't talk to people about doing their jobs. This is what it's like to be a black reporter in 2023.
Good
Absolutely,
job, guys. You did it. You fucking did it. Good job.
Putting these brakes on the trains that would be required to have them would cost a total of $3 billion. Now, that's about 2 weeks of operating revenue that the train system pulls in. 2 weeks of revenue in a single year, meaning
2 weeks profits, and they just can't seem to find a way to pay for it. That's just too much. 2 weeks, $10 billion in stock buybacks. 2 weeks of profits. Nah. It's just fundamentally broken here.
It's a tiny amount of money when you're talking about the entire rail industry, but they didn't want to spend it. Now, look, Trump repealed the rule. The Obama administration originally created the rule. I mean, this is a regulatory kind of rule that transportation
Pete Buttigieg already said that he's not interested in this. Now, of course, part of the reason why Pete or Joe Biden or anyone doesn't even feel the need to address this or talk about it is because the media is not covering it. There is not enough anger. East Palestine is
no, they're only going to address things that the public's mad about, and the media is not going to, like I said, the media is not going to point to this stuff because it would be a unification of the working class way too big. And that would cause mayhem for everyone, all the people up top, the people who own the networks, the people who, you know, own the oil companies, the railroad companies. It would fundamentally shift a lot of conversations potentially. And they're not going to let a situation that creates that sort of potential happen easily or without some sort of attempt to prevent it from happening.
A tiny ass fucking town with 5,000 people in it, and nobody really gives a shit. This will continue happening over and over and over again, just like the railway unions said it would. It's just going to happen to a larger town, going to happen to a more populated area. It's just about assessing the risks in that situation. It's basically about like how much of a stink can we make? How much damage can we get away with? Especially when the media doesn't fucking talk about it. That's the reason why they don't give a shit. That's the reason why the Brandon administration is not doing anything as well.
Because what I'm worried about is, and I'm not just blaming the press here, that every part of this has broken down. The press does not hold the corporations accountable, does not hold the politicians accountable. Then the politicians go, well, I'm gonna get $6 million, the Republican Party is here, from these guys. I'm gonna get nothing from the other side. And there's no downsides. There's no one telling people that I'm a monster.
Exactly. There's no reason to not keep going the way it's going. If there's no public pressure and there's no push for change, they're still gonna be taking money from the railroad lobbyists. The railroad lobbyists are still going to be making buku dolores, and the workers who are helpless are still just in a shit situation. Life goes on.
In favor of giant fireballs in their neighborhood because I got bribed, right? No.
The media is a very important component of this because they're the ones.
That's where
who
outrage starts.
To tie
yes.
all of this together.
Media, the whole purpose of media, freedom of press and freedom of speech was, especially freedom of press, was to create an environment in which journalists are actively doing investigative journalism, not just calling up police departments, getting their statement, putting it in a paper, calling it good, but actually following things up, investigating things, but on a bigger scale, calling out politicians for their corrupt actions, investigating them for corrupt actions. They're supposed to be a form of check and balance in our country, but they have been purchased and corporatized and shifted into a place of just, maintaining conversation points, controlling talking points and public focus. In some instances, in other instances, just chasing views for the sake of money as a result of capitalism and the corporatization of journalism. So like, it's fundamentally broken. I'm gonna keep coming back to that. It's fundamentally broken.
Together. And when they don't do that, the dude in Ohio doesn't fully understand who to get mad at, so he continues to get mad at like fucking, I don't know, gender neutral bathrooms or whatever the fuck. That's an issue. That's a major issue. Very, very frustrating. Not as frustrating as the top of the hour ad break, which everyone in that town of Ohio will be able to avoid if they use their $5 that they got. I don't think Norfolk Southern actually took like a serious hit in the stock market. It's by design. They know that these cost-cutting initiatives could potentially cause these massive disasters, but ultimately you just throw 25 grand at the victims and move on, knowing full well that the media is not really going to cover it, knowing full well that the government is not going to come seeking answers. Literally.
You definitely know the media is not going to follow up on it and keep hammering on it, so you can guarantee after some number of news cycles, and probably not that many, it's going to shift out of public eye. You can pretty much bank on that. Because there is no follow-up on stuff like that. There's only follow-up on, things like the China balloon and shit like that, Just specific types of things.
People in every corporation that's doing this in actuarial sciences, they're doing this kind of risk mitigation. What is your life worth to them? And what happens if there's an environmental disaster? In this circumstance, it's wonderful because, again, it's a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo science, and science is confusing, especially when no one is covering it. And who knows what the long-term impact could be? You could just lie about it and then, deal with it 10 years, 20 years down the line, especially if no one is really asking questions. So there might come a time and place, 10 years, 20 years down the line when they're like, why the fuck is everybody getting cancer in this town? It's so weird. Why the fuck can you not grow any crops here? And then maybe the company will be forced to pay a fine. That's if you're lucky.
Oh, yeah. No, if they do like an environmental study and find it linked to something, and then obviously it'll point straight to this event, maybe. But the fact that it has to wait that long is insane, because there are plenty of people who are keenly aware of and calling to the problems now. There's no reason these problems shouldn't be addressed before they become like really big, or before it's too late for a lot of people. Other than the fact that the money has to come from somewhere, and the place it should be coming from is the railroad companies.
Walking right next to the train cars. Yeah. People with personal chickens in East Palestine are all reporting all their chickens are suddenly deceased.
It's a weird place to end that video, but yeah, wildlife is dying. It's really bad over there. And once again, I can't help but tie a lot of what created this situation as a possibility, and also will further the, mishandling of it, comes back to capitalism and remnants of it, and how when your focus solely is on capitalism, you're going to have situations that you're going to have things like this, where like corners are cut, both in terms of the regulations and the coverage of things, and the criticizing, the level of criticism actually being leveled against corporations as well as politicians. It breaks down so much, because money is power, power is influence. Thanks for watching, guys. Follow me on Twitch to join us live, like and subscribe, and I will catch you later.